I'm joined now by Republican Senator from Alabama, Britt. Senator Britt, always good to have you on. Thank you so much. So back in February, you introduced a resolution saying that the United States should keep all options on the table to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Where do you stand on this issue today as President Trump weighs whether or not to order a military strike in Iran against the nuclear weapons program there? What do you think he should do?
Look, I think President Trump has been crystal clear on this. He has said under no circumstances can Iran have a nuclear weapon. He has not wavered in that at all. He has also said that his very first option and what he would like how he would like to achieve that is through peace. He has talked to them about coming to the table. He has said not only can you not enrich uranium, but we want to dismantle that program. I think that is still on the table, and I think we're all hopeful that that's the pathway that we will go down. But ultimately, the president is in control here, and he will ensure that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. When they say death to America and death to Israel, they mean it. And for how long can we allow them to enrich their proxies across the region, attack U.S. forces, put us and Americans in jeopardy? And I think we will see President Trump be strong. I think he has still said there is optionality for a peaceful way forward. But if the Iranians don't come to the table in a truthful and forthright way, which we haven't seen them do that ever, then I think he will take other recourses to ensure that we are safe.
So the question is, Iran, of course, has a nuclear program, nuclear power program, they will say. And for that, they say they have enriched uranium. The question is whether the enriched uranium they have, especially at the Fordo site, is weaponized to be delivered on a missile, potentially. And there seem to be conflicting narratives about the facts behind that. I want you to take a listen to what President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, told Congress back in March when asked what the IC, the intelligence community, what their assessment was. And then right after that, President Trump asked about it on Tuesday. Take a listen.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
How close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
I'm not sure how well you could hear that, but he basically said, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard said. I think the Iranians are very close to having a nuclear weapons program. So which is it?
Look, I trust President Trump. He is our commander-in-chief. He is the one that will make this decision. He both created and leads the America First policy, the America First movement. He understands about keeping us safe both here and abroad. I trust his instincts and certainly stand with the president.
So you think the intelligence community assessment that Tulsi Gabbard shared, Director of National Intelligence Gabbard shared, was inaccurate?
Well, Jake,
how do you reconcile it?
What I think is, under no circumstances should Iran be enriching uranium. I mean, we know that they are an untrustworthy adversary, if I may. And so making sure that they cannot continue to do that we have complete dismantlement of that program has to be the goal. We cannot walk away from this and leave them with the ability to achieve and get a nuclear weapon. That's not only bad for Israel, it is bad for America, and it is bad for the globe. This is a moment in time. We will look back at this. If we walk away without ensuring that that program is dismantled or destroyed, and unfortunately Americans will pay for that. And so this is the time for us to come together to look for a peaceful pathway forward, to try to get them to the table, to agree to no program and absolutely no enrichment. There is no need for enrichment with Iran. And if not, then we'll have to look at other options, and ultimately President Trump is in charge there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as simple, though, obviously, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it's not as simple as President Trump orders the strike on the Fordo plant and ends the nuclear enrichment program, and then everyone goes back to how things were. Obviously, we've been through a number of wars, this country. President Trump's pledge to not have the United States enter wars in the Middle East is one of the reasons why he was elected. Are you concerned at all about that? All the members of the MAGA movement who say, I voted for him exactly to not do this.
Jake, that's exactly why he started with peace. He said, come to the table. He told Iran, here's your opportunity. Let's talk about a pathway forward. There were many that did not want him to give them that opportunity, that believed them to be untrustworthy actors, who believe them and know them to have funded Hamas, that ultimately we saw what happened on October 7th. We know what the Houthis are doing in Yemen. We know what Hezbollah has done across Lebanon and beyond. We could go on and on and on about their intentionality, what they have funded, and what they have actually done. So there are many people who thought that him taking that first extension of there is a peaceful pathway forward, that they wanted action immediately. He absolutely did the right thing. President Trump said, come to the table and let's figure out if we can make this work. Iran walked away, and if I were them, I would heed his warning. Do not touch U.S. military. Do not touch U.S. personnel. At that point, it is absolutely and totally game over. But at this point, if you want to come to the table, and it is not just about enrichment, it is complete and total dismantlement of this program, Jake. This is a moment in time, and we must seize this moment. We want a peaceful pathway forward first, but if that cannot be achieved, then all options are on the table.
You're changing subjects now. You're on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which held a hearing to investigate what happened exactly with President Biden and his acuity, and whether or not there was a cover-up. What questions do you still have following today's hearing?
Yeah, well, first off, I am incredibly frustrated and disappointed in my Democratic colleagues. This is a moment in time to actually get answers to the questions that we have. It is clear that we had a commander-in-chief who was not in command. It is clear that someone else was making decisions and or covering up for his lack of mental acuity. If we want to ensure that this doesn't happen again, we have to get to the bottom of actually what happened over the past 4 years, and as we've seen, even longer than that. So I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed that they wouldn't come to the table and be a part of the solution moving forward. I think we have to take a look at the 25th Amendment, Section 4 in particular. Is there too much ambiguity there? Do we need to create constraints? Do we need to define what unable means? There's a lot of questions around that. Additionally, there's questions about not just cabinet secretaries and their role in the 25th Amendment and how we put the proper guardrails in place to make sure this doesn't happen again. But there's also a question about senior staff. Look, as a senior staffer myself, you come in and you have a duty and obligation to the country and to the people you serve. And I think we have some real questions for the people who are around him day to day. So I find it incredibly discouraging and truly disgusting that we have an opportunity to get to the bottom of this, to have a conversation, and yet they chose to not show up. So don't lecture me about democracy if you won't come and sit at the table and try to get answers to how we can make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, thank you so much. Always good to have you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.